Bloody crickets. Yeah, that was a big pause. Bloody crickets. I wish I had just a gob of them. We just need a noise. This week we need the noise of crickets. We need the din of crickets this week. I don't even know what to say about how wrong everything's going, how fast. And it's all because people want to believe they understand certain things and they don't. They actually don't. And as very arrogant as that sounds in me to be able to so-called judge that, I just got to tell you, we don't understand what we're up against in the general, even though we might claim that we do. But before I get to that, I got to refer you over to Ron Steffen's Game On. It's always, I had a big smile on my face. He's going through the words, folks. When you read the dictionary, the etymology of these words, and what we're up against, you see exactly how this whole situation's inverted, and I can't tell you how big the smile on my face is when I hear people getting that. And you realize this whole thing is just a bunch of shite, if I can say it that way for the sensitive ears. And Ron brings up you can go and find all these names if you want and call these things all you want. Finds out a new form of government based on this new word analysis. It's there for us to see, and when we see it, when we finally get it, all of a sudden it starts making sense and things are a lot better. And that's what I've been trying to get people to get through this nonsense. You have to get through what you have to kind of just come to terms and embrace what you're involved with. Because if you can't, and that when you see the subject and listen to a subject matter, and I'm going to give a date which I don't really give. You can go listen to his broadcast at 3:27. At least the time period I was able to listen to it was probably at least the second hour, probably before that. The term that he comes up with is cockatocracy, and you can just say cockatocracy, because that's what you're in. And when you see how the words work, you see exactly that's what you're in and you're under. And that's where you get to start to see, when I was talking, your civil rights is what you were gave, like the republic you were gave and couldn't keep, or weren't diligent to keep, or aren't going to go after it the correct way. Go after those that have stolen it from you, like we can identify the Bar Association, the political parties, and all that. When you don't go after it, that's what you live on. You live in a cockocracy. And so, your civil rights are those rights that you were gave, your inalienable rights to pay exactions of every time, to pay extortions of every time if you didn't think you lived in a nasty, stinky world. And so I just appreciate it. I got to just let you know, I just appreciate people coming on to the fact of these things. And you need to all do that. You need to, and I'm appreciative this week. I had a couple of people comment to me that I know it takes a couple times listening, and I'm amazed that you can listen to me more than once, but I do appreciate that you're vigilant, and keep listening, and these new things come out at you the more you listen to what I'm saying. And I'd have to apologize. I don't do it so formally. I'm not so book read that way. It's coming from subject matter and content. That's how I respond. I respond to problems. I don't respond as an educator that way, though. I've learned through using something as a source of inspiration to talk about, I can bring these concepts in. But when you find out why your civil rights, as I've been saying, it's right in the law that your civil rights aren't what you thought they were, stop embracing that, stop believing that's for you, and you realize what that system has been doing against you, that the reality of what you live in, you can push through it. Then you just say, it's like I've said before, once you realize you're in an open-air prison and you're really dealing with the situation as an inmate, then you might start to appreciate how to really approach what you're doing. Now, does that mean that I actually believe we're absolutely in this prison? Well, we're there until we throw it off, and that's the whole thing about international law telling us that. So this is where you get the idea. I even get the idea that this is a evolutionary engagement. You have to evolve into and through this whole process and keep evolving beyond the nasty, stinky minds of those that have built the cage for you. And you can't use a lot of these new age, new philosophical evasions that have been created to try and come up with, well, what we should do and denounce all that was good just because it's a wholesale throwing everything out that appears to not have worked till today. Like I just heard the other day that capitalism is no good, and so they were a communist. And I go, these are all just isms anyway. But real capital is what producers do. You don't have a financial system. You're dealing with the raw materials of the earth and your labor. That's capital. Now, what they've done is they've adult everything, and they make things as money. They make things as instruments of, like insurance and bonds, as security, not real security. It's all as, and then they control that environment, and they got you to buy in. Really simple. The buy-in is critical to the Agenda 21 thing. You heard William Roberts talk about it before. The public buy-in. That's you. You have to buy into this stuff, and once you buy in, they get you to abandon your law. It's really simple. And so I appreciate Ron coming through. As you see, even those of us old long in the tooth dogs still can learn stuff. I'm learning stuff all the time. He's learning now that maybe in context what he's already you'll know. You know this inside your soul that it's wrong, and then these words tell you how. They actually give you the word in your mouth to be able to describe it, and you can redefine your world that is affecting you to the point that you embarrass the other side. He came up with that in his broadcast too. To someone who's going to give me a traffic ticket, I'm going to define it as something else, and it's the truth, and that's how you start to deal with it. I do it a little bit different in that I'm dealing with the oppressor, the occupier, the whoever you want to call them, the one that's violating us in that legal as system. And I found for myself that it's better to deal in the things that they were written black and white obligated to condemn them in than to try and make it up myself. It's real easy too. That I don't have to make it up. It doesn't become the argument. I keep telling you all the time, don't make the argument. Walk in with the foundational principle, or the law, or the thing. And the thing that we're talking about is showing that even the color of the law that could even meet the demand has not by its application. And that creates the violations and crimes and derelictions of duty that are so easily to point out so quickly. And so I just want to comment to that. And for those of you that can go over and listen to that thought process, it's get your grown up ears on. It's kind of language I don't like to use much. But it's the truth of the language, and it's where you're dealing with it. Remember, I keep telling and have told you, the miners, even when they were outlaw to the governmental system of laws for minerals, they went out and mined anyway, because that's just the nature of them. That's the nature of who they are. It's like a rancher. You're a rancher. That's who you are. You're just wired that way. It's what you do. And so they were outlaws before the government caught up to them. The government caught up to them and then adopted their own governments. The miners had governments to keep the peace amongst themselves. See, laws bring the peace, no matter how much other people want to deny it. Law and the acknowledgement of the black and white objective basis by which we will treat each other. And typically, it's only when it's like a contract. You only need it when things go bad, or there's an issue, a real issue, a question. It doesn't solve everything, but at least it gives us a nice, narrow, black and white guideline that you can bring to bear that the miners did that. They had their own government when they were outlaws, and they brought peace to themselves. The Congress, when they tried to solve a problem, and in this regard, the courts were a whole lot more amenable to law. Told the Congress that you have forbeared to allow these people to come on the public land and derive their livelihoods from the mineral estate, from the dominant estate. You have given them a title by your forbearance to keep them off. That's a real big lesson right there. That also shows you that as long as using the land is the highest use, and once it starts to happen, there's really not much authority, even the so-called sovereign, to deny it. That a year later, after the courts did that, declared that statement, that the Congress had no really other choice but to accept the prior governments that had dealt and made peace in the territory, and adopted the miners' laws, the miners' regulations over their title and how they got it and how they kept it and property, as the mining law we hear. As I told you how that works for the occupying forces, governmental outlaw problem last week. That you hear how we ought to be doing it, and that's a producer class that sits in it's tangible, it's real capital. You can literally walk out in your hands, go find a nugget, have value. You don't have to go, there's no systemic condition there. You're producing from your labor something. So this is your livelihood. It's integral, absolutely integral with the mining law. You can't, in fact, the disposition of the soil to the miner and anybody else that has a patent had to start with your life being put into the soil to produce something. And for that, we were rewarded. For those that would and could, they were rewarded with the land so they'd stay there to continue doing what they did best. Now, comes a time now, all that stuff that we learned we shouldn't do is coming by foreign law to eradicate that sensible, functioning rightness of how people work correctly amongst themselves with this new imposition of the foreign imposition that we hear routinely. And I'm going to go to one thing that shows you that there's this so-called sovereignty that sits in between the states that's supposed to that keeps them separate and keeps them a bubble, a cell around them. There's a border that protects them. Whether or not you consider them abroad or in admiralty, they're there with supposed to have a cell, each one of them, that one cannot intrude on the other. Then I'm going to go to quickly without too much exercise and discussion yet, because about something how you see a similar court system denying and dishonoring the United States, the people, by dishonoring and making war on its laws that kept us where we were in a nice fashion amongst ourselves. So we have Battlefield America. I could see that coming. I could see that in 2008 when they went after all the titles through the MERS. Because I looked at that was like a 9/11 in the financial sector, actually for the people side, not the political, governmental, geopolitical side, but for the people and their monetary system that was foisted on them. That was the adulteration of most of the land titles. And that is how I said they went and done it. Just like I looked at 9/11, 9/11, they went and done it. At 2008, I said that's how they went and done it. Because Hernando de Soto told us in his book, if you read it, and I was fortunate enough to find it and read it, that what made us powerful in the United States of America was our titles. That's all I'm talking about here. What I say about the miners' law and the government giving the courts identifying a title in a miner even before he was a law to give him the law because he invested himself in the time and he didn't get thrown out. And the Congress had to capitulate to that. In 1 year, they made the law that allowed and embraced all of that. And we have now to see how powerful land use, and not land use, but the possession and the production, not land use as has been foisted on us, but land possession and production is the rock of the foundation of the nation of the United States that made it different than every other country that's being destroyed. So if we don't hold this right now, instead of finding all other manners of things to try and say, oh, it's no good, and so we're whining about it, and go look for other conditions to try and create, which you won't. The crickets, folks, you're up against that demon. Instead of holding that good thing, we're going to try and abandon and go other ways. I've focused on what we're trying to do to hold on to these very basic, foundational, proper things. And we can use the attacker to see what the properness is, because what they bring is this insanity that causes the chaos and anarchy within the system. A complete chaos is developed now that no one can expect anything, and so the one in the seat of decision makes that decision. Everything now becomes an issue unless you tie it to a foundational place, and that's why I found the mining law always is the land. Call it the soil for the purposes of the dialogue, because that's what was in the compacts between Congress and the states, at least in the West. It's not land. And so, again, the terms I do are the technical terms, and the terms you were hearing Ron Steffen talking about, I hope I'm pronouncing your Steffen, it's not Stephen, but I think it's Steffen. Him talking about is really the how you build what's dealing with you, not necessarily the technical side, on the legal side. Because you got to speak to that and through that, but inside that, they have to speak to the law. You have to find the law and differentiate it from the legal. As I can do in a way when I talk to you about differentiating between commerce and production. Commerce is a legalized thing. It has for about ever been that way. And production it sustains nations. And the amount of population that's involved always has been very, very low. It's a lot less now because we're not as agrarian, but that doesn't matter. The foundational part of people, what they get their stuffs from, comes from people who bring it out for the rest of them. So let's go quickly here to well, so if you find yourself living in a cockatocracy, don't admit it. I mean, you can embrace it. So now you can crawl out of the stinking abyss that I keep telling you it's a stinking abyss. That's what I'm talking to. So, Supreme Court stops Oklahoma suit against Colorado's sovereignty for all you 420 people. And we're coming 4 minutes just to give you a head up here. We're 4 minutes or so, 3.5 minutes. So get ready. In what supporters are calling a victory for states' rights, the Constitution, and federalism, the Supreme Court killed a controversial lawsuit against Colorado voters' decision to end marijuana prohibition. The suit, brought by officials from Oklahoma and Nebraska, argued that federal statutes and international treaties purporting to criminalize the plant override state laws. Listen very carefully. Without explanation, though, the High Court declined to hear the case. Folks, did they need to explain this if you've listened behind a woodshed? That premise at the end, that the international treaties that criminalize the override state laws, that is a absolutely wrong position. That is the Bar Association attorneys attempting to force the foreign nature of the world onto the United States, and it won't fly. So read the answers right there. We don't need an explanation why the so-called High Court declined to hear the case. That means that Colorado and numerous other states where voters or their elected officials have nullified federal marijuana statutes and the United Nations drug conventions are free to continue exercising their sovereignty and right to self-government. Now, I'm not going to go more. You can get this link. This happened, I think last week. It came out at the end of the broadcast. Let me just call your attention back to what I talked about. Same area of the country, Kansas versus Colorado, the water suit. Now, I think it's 1907. I don't even remember. I just wanted to call your attention. We talked about all this sovereignty stuff, and it's pretty absolute. Now, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I mean, as far as when you get absolute and you're inside that bubble, be careful, I guess, is my caveat to you. But between the states abroad each other, these are sovereignties. They're cell walls that are not to be penetrated, and the acts of one, unless it's water flowing through, are not the issue of another to complain, and even so, then by underlying foundational laws to the water itself. So there's a hierarchy that I keep wanting to point you out to when you read the black and white, how to set these all up for yourselves as you're looking at this. Almost wholly different than I've been finding on the internet. And I was provided for another guy steps up to talk about what he knows and how he can denounce everybody else about how wrong they are, and he talks about all this stuff. And you listen to him, and for those of us that's been doing the research on how this all ties together, well, he can put some truisms in there, but a lot of it's untied. You'll listen very carefully. There's no citation at all. Just his assertion, bald assertion. And if you research the guy out, you'll find out he's actually advancing an agenda, the universal agenda. In fact, the same agenda that Ron was talking about, that is confusing gender in a system that's supposed to be gender neutral. If you don't understand how screwed up this is, you can just look at that little conundrum. That there's a lot of bad information on the internet, and almost designedly so, to keep us divided amongst ourselves. As I was saying, all these issues just seem to be such a division anymore. As I look at it, people don't really have that foundation. They don't really have the foundation that even Ron went through on his 327 broadcast on the morning. Even that basic word foundation. It wasn't even legal words, but it attached to the legal system, didn't it? And that's exactly what's going on. And once you see that, you can go, oh, that's the stinking abyss I'm in. Okay, now at least I know where I'm at, right? And that's important. People I don't think appreciate that. They want to fight this thing. I say you gotta understand and embrace what exists as a reality. You gotta stop thinking it doesn't exist to try and run away from it. It's not going to work. It's there to hunt you down. And I found out it's not there to hunt you down if you find out that what they're hunting you down on is different than what they were supposed to be going after. So this case, the Supreme Court would not address a case where the internal laws of one nation did not conform with another nation sitting abroad and the Supreme Court would not take that case on where it was within that sovereignty to do so. This should give you, all you states' rights people, a real scare, because that means that if you're being taken down from the inside in your government by this foreign agenda, that will be your law as well. And remember, they're legalizing this stuff for theft. Taxation is theft kind of thing. This is theft, and it's the criminalizing it at one level and giving you the privilege to go ahead and do it, when it should be not criminal at all. That's most of this stuff. And so again, I had a big smile on my face for Ron, going through this word study, and I can't remember all these word studies I've done that just bring me here. That's why, in some regard, I just kind of talk. It just comes out at some point. There's an underlying foundation from which way I speak, which I don't explain, and maybe that's what's kind of confusing until you listen to what I've said numbers of times, and you start putting it together because you're doing the hard work that you actually need to do. So, here we have the example. I talked about Kansas versus Colorado, right? I talked to you within that Kansas versus Colorado, I think it was 1907 case. You'll see that they state right in there, the system of courts that we have is what keeps us from having to fight each other. In other words, these adversarial court systems are civil courts, like Civil War courts. Another violation to us. Nonetheless, it sits there, and do with it what you will, or not. Be treated by it if you will or not. You have to learn how to address it. But they said if you have a remedy in the country United States, and then I've explained to you in the NDAA, I think it was 2014, the Office of President declared under NDA, we're going extrajudicial. I told you your whole country just collapsed. You now are in a war footing. That's why they declared Battlefield America. But this case is important for all you. Oh, we're way past now. See, 2 minutes past, or 3 minutes past. I hope you all enjoyed. 4:20's past. But here's the case that shows you that these states, how powerful the states' laws are when they don't attach to the land where water might pass through and there might be actually contention. But if you go back to the Kansas-Colorado case decision, you'll get a foundational understanding of how the Supreme Court starts to treat things. A whole lot more lawful than we get at the lower courts, which tells you we're in war at the lower courts. And that gets me into another problem, and I'm not going to get too much into it. For those of you that are minors or interested, and certainly near and dear to my activities for the last 10 years trying to explain it, I told you there was a lawsuit going in to stop the moratorium in Oregon that was provided. It was written and promoted by a bunch of people that I know don't know what they're doing, with an attorney that hasn't done anything for anybody for a long time, over 10 years, and I told him so that many years ago. That their case, and it certainly didn't handle it like we handled our case, their case for stopping the moratorium was just issued a decision, an order by a magistrate judge in a United States District Court that summarily threw their case out and agreed with the government that the state governments have the right to put environmental impositions on minors because Congress never talked to that. The judge, the federal United States attorneys who proffered that opinion, gave that to the judge, and the judge found it was very persuasive. This is a magistrate judge in another court. Now let's get to I'm not going to go through it. I don't even have it before me. I'm just going through what I read. I didn't even read the whole thing, folks. I just go to certain things, and when they fail, that's good enough for me. I'll find the rest of it. But it doesn't matter if the insides are perfect if the wrapper's no good. If your authorities are no good on the outside, it doesn't matter what's on the inside. That's what people don't understand about all these USDC court cases. right off the top, they talk about Article 3, but if you look at that decision, you'll see Article 3 is only considered standing. You'll never find anywhere in that court case how the court was competent to establish, the United States District Court is competent under Article 3. You're not going to see how the court that is there is competent to hear the subject matter of Article 3, and you certainly are not going to see that a magistrate judge is competent under Article 3 to enter the order. So right off the bat, I found interesting in this order that we're talking about, and I keep talking in the regard of jurisdiction, because if you don't have if it's a color of authority you're looking at that imposes upon your rights, it's a felony right up front. And all these orders have to be self-sufficient. They're prima facie complete. They can't be holes in it. That the fact that there's an omission to state how the court is constituted under Article 3, how the subject matter before that court is Article 3 and it's also competent to hear, and that the officer looking at it is competent under Article 3, which means he has to be commissioned to do so, and a magistrate judge is not. Magistrate judge is simply an administrator of certain things. They're judges, but they're not Article 3 competent. That this decision immediately showed me it has no value, and yet it's pushed by these attorneys. These attorneys are trying to push remember, the House resolution that we heard, House Delegate resolution of the ABA, which all these attorneys are member, said where appropriate, we're going to shove sustainable development down your throat. Well, they find it appropriate when they misapply the case law, or the facts of the case, and do not apply the law. They do it hidden right in front of your face. But the attorney, we went in fact, before the case was filed, these people that have been wrong on this law, they've been hurting the miners now. This is the microcosm of the miner, is the macrocosm we have in America. There are people that look like you, they talk with you, that are stabbing you in the back and smiling and thinking they're doing it right. Even in the ignorance, they're still stabbing you in the back. And I claim, because I'm sitting here as a witness, that I've told them more, and other people have told them better, that they're doing it on purpose to you. But that's me and you, because these people are diminishing this land and the soil rights and property sanctity. The same cell that protects the states protects your property. Understand the problem here. If they're going to recognize it at the state, they have to recognize it at the patent. It's the same treaty power. And these attorneys submit it as they don't even talk about the property. And so a colleague of mine, the chairman of the Jefferson Mining District, and I went in to tell the county that was being solicited to jump on this lawsuit, to tell them, you better not jump on this lawsuit. The people that are involved don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand the mining law. And the one that they've hired, the representative, has shown a track record of not doing the right argument and to work to defeat the miners. We were successful in warning off that county. They did not jump on. So we're on record to say we knew before this going in that this case would be determined against the miner. Actually, against the laws of the United States that provide property. You will find nothing in all the paperwork to talk to property. Nothing. You will find the magistrate relying on the United States attorney, who is supposed to be protecting the beneficiary of the trust, that the attorneys are supposed to be asserting, that they assert an unfound and unproven conjecture on a subject matter that the environmental laws would not be even relevant to, that was accepted by another bar member called the judge as relevant and persuasive. And they destroyed in Oregon, and now it's going to go out. I'm sure it's going out. It's going to go out to encumber the property that was conveyed to the people who are accepting the mineral estate grant. So that's just the cover on that. That's all I'm going to touch. I just wanted you miners out there and you people that signed the petition to know you need to really step up. If you stepped up to that petition at Jefferson Mining District and you're going to think about even protecting property rights, you need to be involved. We're really going fast now into the stinking of it. So frankly, folks, I lost a whole night's sleep, because what this does, it doesn't really affect us somehow, except that now we have more to fight against, because now they'll take this invalid, void order and they'll impose it on everyone else that does know the law. And you say, well, what does you know the law of the lawyer? Well, the lawyers are legal. The lawyers don't have a clue. And we have this proved out all the time. In fact, I was just talking to a colleague of mine. He was in the room working with behind the scenes, as we do, working with the governor on trying to get this thing squared out. He's in a room in a meeting with 6 attorneys. There's 8 people. There's 6 attorneys, and one of them is a financial bean counter. So you got the bank sitting right there in this meeting. The meeting was supposed to be a 30-minute introductory meeting. It ended up going 4 hours as he was explaining how they all don't do it right and where. And I have no reason to believe he's telling me wrong. We can't be lying to each other in order to do what we do. And his report to me was that they all left the room with red faces. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't know the harm that they're doing. They don't know how they're doing it. They think they're doing it right. And yet they know they're doing it wrong. That was the other thing. They know they're bringing in the sustainable development thing. They know, they admitted to that. So when we have evidence behind the scenes that we know what's going on and we can stymie, you can get a stadium full of judges and lawyers, and just a couple of us can destroy their imposition because it's lawless. And that's why I keep telling you, get the black and white in your eyes. That's where they have to meet that they aren't, just shows you that you're living in you're living inside of a bank robbery at least. What remedy do you think you're going to find there more than the one you have to step up and resist? So for those of you, we have had a very serious defeat, not a defeat, I guess it's a very serious imposition thrown in our way. 99% of the miners are going to agree that that they don't have the rights. When you look very carefully what was said, the proper argument, well, it's not an argument, the proper evidence wasn't brought forward to destroy the argument. And the attorneys in the bar, and the judge, and all the environmental terrorist groups, you know that they're swinging, they're throwing their confetti now this week. They all conspired together to make war on the laws of the United States. And let me explain one more quick thing without going through the decision of the order, just showing how facially valid and invalid it is and void. The equity court in which they pretend sits there was duty bound to protect the beneficiaries. They couldn't take the opinion of an attorney from the United States government. And when you start seeing this, you can now line item how they made fraud on the court, fraud on the system of justice that we all expect that has somehow got covered over. And when you can start doing that, you start exposing them for the criminals that no one else has done this before. So I guess that's my most important thing. It's not to give you the answers about this judgment, because what happens is people listen to me and then they think they know what they're talking about and they go do it wrong again. My problem is when I look at this stuff, we're sitting in a system of organized crime. I don't even expect with what I know to prevail. That's the truth of this whole thing. However, I do understand I can make a witness in paper, very clear and concise, and I can go right up the feeding chain. That's another thing we're doing, and I have to apologize. I hope you're still listening. An emailer a long time ago said they want to help. I have not been able to get back to you. I have just been buried, literally buried. I'm losing sleep over the other night. How is this decision now going to interfere with everything we've done? Not that it's defeated us, it's that we have to answer to the arrogance that's going to rely on this void judgment. And how do we do that? The very next day, I'm on the horn talking to people that are going to be dealing with it, and I tell you, folks, it just always blows me away. One of our guys was already ahead of it. He's already had a meeting, anticipated all this before. He didn't even know of this order. But it just so happened we were in it, engaged and timely, and we were able to send the message through another meeting, and anticipated all the errors and failings of this order, so that those lawyers, other group of lawyers, know what we know is what we knew before. Like we knew before this was going to go out bad. Summary judgment, folks. This didn't even get the light of day on the case. All these same supposed miners, all using the same functions. They're also the same ones, for those of you doing the petition, all those same guys are now with this OMA Angstrom guy, who incompetent attorney, another incompetent attorney, that the petition on Jefferson Mining District sends a message to the committee of the Natural Resources Committee, telling them, don't touch my property. They are all engaged in that crime. See, I see all these minors now as their own criminals. They're agreeing to subvert the rest of the property for you. And I speak you because anybody who has ever had property deals in patents. You have to. You don't have the property privately if there's not a patent or some state certificate equals a patent. That's what they're after, folks. They have no right, title, or interest to touch that. That's the felony. Anybody or group of people getting together to purport that is a felony. The environmentalists that were on the lawsuit that intervened, that the judge allowed to intervene on the case for property rights, was a felony, except the attorney who allowed the magistrate judge, this administrative officer over in Article 3 court purportedly, doing Article 3 matters purportedly that can't, that attorney allowed this guy to say, oh yeah, you guys get to come in. Why? He got to say that because the attorney never brought the property that showed that these third-party interlopers didn't have a right to do so, and to do so would have been the felony. Yes, pause. I know I just went through a ton, folks. It's so clear to me, and I'm hoping at some point it's so clear to you how they're doing it to us. It's a crime, and we can call it out. And I found out a long time ago when they collected me up to steal my child services racketeering exposing documentary. Yeah, they found me out. They collected me up, put me away in the hole for their 3-week period. Found out they can be dirty, so you got to be careful. Found out they'll make up a whole kind of stuff, and it looks like it's real, and you can do nothing about it. You have to protect against this ahead of time. And you are seeing their method over and over and over. And I've been able to develop now as a pattern of racketeering activity. You can't do this sitting behind your keyboard not getting engaged. You can't do this and see this and document this thing and stop it if you're not there. If you're not engaged, and in evolutionary engagement, as I keep telling you, you have to evolve through what you're learning and didn't know, and still maintain your position, advance your position actually, still maintain your balance, still keep on them, still keep ahead of them. And you get so far, it's so easy to get so far ahead of them, they can never ever catch up. And what you find out is it's like you went light speed, you ended up in a whole different universe. And then they try to pursue you, and that's where the natural crime happens. And then you just out it. Takes a little bit of work. So the first case here, we have the Supreme Court saying, listen, there's sovereignty and there's bubbles of sovereignty, and they can't mix. You can't take your dislike of someone else's lawmaking capacity and impose your will on another state. For those of you in states' rights, you have to know then you better get inside your government that's been co-opted by these usurpers, and you better learn what we did in 2013, that the Bar Association that controls it all and wrote it all, because in the Model Business Corporation Act is also the Bar Association authorship, which we found in their House delegation resolution. Remember, we read it right out of their document. We also know how the parties, both political parties, for you old Trumpsters and cruisers and you Byrne and Hillary, all the same, folks. That's why it's all the same. If you don't come in and go into your state and identify that and work to throw it out, and then and look very critically at what you really need, and you'll find out it's actually already there. What we don't have is accountability, the kind that I'm trying to bring in the face of everyone being a criminal that's in a seated decision. You're not going to do it. If you think you can wave your little pamphlet, your little booklet, Constitution around and say that's it, and just rail against the fact you don't have rights, or say, oh, screw government's no good at all, you're looking at an occupation. You're not looking at what was there really to do what the job it was to do, which was the Declaration of Independence told us we were supposed to see. It's there. So, a little bit too much more. I know I don't have a document yet for you. I don't want to go too much into this thing, more than into this thing, but with the minor, what they say, SB 838 being upheld as an environmental imposition reserved to the states. Wow, well, I mean, just go look at the basic law, how wrong that is. How wrong that is. The whole purpose for the ceding of the lands to the federal government was that reason right there. But the state wouldn't be able to do that. It's totally blown out because the magistrate can't see Any reason why they won't be put in? Why? He can't see it because he's blind, like justice is blind, but in the wrong way. He violates his fiduciary duty as a judge, an actual judge, to do the law and justice, and then he does not honor as a trustee of the trust and the beneficiaries in the land disposal what Congress actually intended. Instead of takes his buddy bar members, their opinion. And you see the fall. You see the corruption. You're gonna watch this cockatocracy roll downhill now into the stinking abyss. And if you're in that stinking abyss and you don't know how to get out the way, you're going to be balled up in it. I guess that's my main problem even talking to you about it right now, because I didn't really want to talk about it. I am getting so tired of putting information out that people misuse and do it on purpose in order to make people think they have the right answer and they're talking the right stuff, and then misusing it to their detriment. It's becoming to the point, and I don't know, I've been thinking about it again. I always go through these low times. I just want to stop talking because I'm being not used for the tool that I could use by most people. I'm being used by a few in order to hurt the rest of you. And I'm just saying that, so folks, if you got any sense of care in you and any sense of independence in you, you can't sit back. You just can't. The answers are so easy to see, and you can point these criminals out so quickly. It should be fun target practice at the carnival. I don't know why people don't see it this way. Instead, they go and they rail about, their Constitution, how they're not getting their rights, how this and that, how the other taxes, all this other nonsense. The earth is flat. Oh, we got to do it anarchy. Come on, stop the nonsense. All this stuff is flat earth theory right now. I don't even know where. I just know all that's a psyop. And how do I know that? It's the very thing that made me smile about Ron coming on to what he came on to this morning, which you won't hear this morning is irrelevant to the file listeners later on. But hey, so fascinating. The answer is right in front of us, and you have to have the eyes to see. You have to have the ears to hear. And the only way I can see to give it to you to know that better than what I can yak here is for you to go get that black and white. Just as Ron was even doing a cursory entomology research wherever he got it. I assume it was on the internet. See, I got mine before the internet, so I had to go to the books. I had to go inside. I had to actually go to libraries. Not saying Ron didn't, but I'm saying today his seemed to be interesting information. Didn't seem to come from a library book. So you find it where you find it, but you got to make sure it's quality, and then you'll see the dots you can connect. That's, I guess, another thing is smile, because one word leads to the next. You can't help but see this. It's why I was able to point out Title 42, Section 1981 as being an inversion of what you think. Oh, we got civil rights. Yeah, but those rights mean you get to pay exactions of every time. Those are extortions against you. And then we look at the word, and it's wrongful extortions on top of that, and that's all legal, folks. That's quite fine after the Civil War now. And we find out that law imposed those same things on the freedman, and that was already on the white citizen. Talk about being colorblind. So it's all right there for us to see. I just thinking about Ron going through that. You're going to find that inversion of logic and the actual fact of what we're living in every word study you go through applied. And actually, I think I understand on UCY, Clint Richardson comes behind me. He goes through a lot of that word study. Now, I would caution everybody doing word studies, when you get into doing this legal thing, you have to then conform to the legal thing for the purposes of discussing the narrow path that they're obliged and have duties to follow. Don't use this fanciful connections. It doesn't matter inside their legal. And don't go over to the fanciful connections that you hear like someone like Jordan Maxwell making. Those are useless to you. Absolutely. They're interesting, but they're useless to you. But word study is all important to orient your mind back to what you're actually looking at. Because what you see anymore and have been and been told and shown and is referenced everywhere may very well be an adulteration which alters your perception, which gives you the wrong focus. The wrong perception make you do the wrong thing. If you don't know you're at the end of a cliff, if you don't know that rock that's under your foot really isn't supported and it looks solid and you step on it, I hope you can fly, because the natural law of gravity is going to win out, I think. Well, unless you are just so blessed you can grab onto a tree growing out, a little root growing out, maybe you might save yourself. But natural law is going to affect you there because your misperception of what you thought you were around, what was around you in your environment. So this perception weakness has been exploited and exploited more. And I was fascinated last week and about this thing about the real-time expression transfers of facial reenactments on people being one of the tools they can do. And I offered that I didn't know if the technology was up to snuff. And part of that was because on the monitor, on one of the systems I have, the monitor and the graphics were such that I could see artifacts in the faces. And so I said, well, maybe it's not quite up to snuff. Well, I've been able to find another video, lot better resolution. And I will have to tell you, there are a couple things, and they show you the limit, so you can be looking for the limit, but that's an extreme limit. While you're looking at how they do this, they impose upon your visual perception to affect you. Like Google is loading your results to give you a certain outcome to your mind, and the one that even sees that happening to them will be the worst that will agree in the direction of the information giver. I have a video that'll show you, and I've been looking, not that I have a lot of time to really study, but this technology is very good. And they're doing this technology on regular consumer grade equipment. So I'm going to tell you, no different than the idea of the 9/11 real-time interpositions of certain things going on. The commerce side, the industrial side, has much better capability. And I would like to hear anybody look at this video. You'll get in the blogcaster after I post-produce the blogcast. I would ask to have anybody show me where they find a way to identify the face transfer treatment to be identifiable in real time. markonthebeast@yahoo.com. I'm usually pretty good at looking at this stuff, but eyes are getting weak. I got attention deficit disorder because my attention's on something else. I don't multitask really well, so I've got partially my mind's always working on this other stuff. But I would be liking to know how to identify. This is very, very good, folks, and this is consumer grade stuff. I will tell you, I have a funny feeling we're not going to be able to see as the future rolls. Our visual witness is going to be completely adulterated. Yes, after last week's broadcast and bringing this technology to our notice, a friend came in and said, well, do you know that there was a movie back when? And I only know a couple movies. I've never been, I guess I'm kind of interested. I'm into filming them. I'm into creating them. I don't do that anymore. I like doing that side of it, but I really haven't been a moviegoer. He says, yeah, there's been a movie where they do scans and use scans, and pretty soon then they take all your measurements, all your computer looks at you and does all the scans, and pretty soon you're gone. They need to get rid of you, and then they have this whole body virtual image that they use wherever they go. And it was a movie called Looker. So I've got a couple links for that, just kind of neat to see. Way back in 1981, telling you what's coming. Now I got it real time in consumer products, and I'm just going to say, the industrial side, that was one computer, laptop with a regular camera. What do you think they could do with multiple computers, multiple high resolution type cameras that are programmed to work together? Pretty interesting. So I told you it's going to be a time in your life coming, and I said this before, and I said I think we're here. When they were telling us way back when, decades ago, there's going to be a time when you're not going to be able to trust what you're told and what you see, what you hear. Understand, if they can do that with visual, they absolutely can do it with the audio. And I have a little bit of experience being able to adjust someone's presentation to fit a time slot. When I was doing that kind of stuff in video, the little techniques that you miss that I could show you. You would think that the guy spoke only for 5 minutes. He actually went on for something like 25 minutes. And I was able to recompress his whole dialogue, and I think I was scrupulous in the fact that I re-edited it, integrated with what his meaning was, but I had to compress the time. I cut out almost 20 minutes worth of his speech. And you didn't know it when I could put any words in his mouth essentially by cutting different sections. That they now have technology. All they need is a few seconds of your audio, and they have thousands of hours of mine. So when you start hearing me really talk crazy, consider that. They can take small sections of your speech and fabricate and create, like they can do this imaging, the words that they want you to speak. And then they have somebody who takes your picture, takes another video of you and this new face recognition technology with the audio they now have constructed, and then actually mouths the words inside your face to have you say stuff that you never did before. And so we're back at the point where I come on years ago to say, wow, there's a deception coming over us, that I'm going to try and bring at least the knowledge I have of how I see through it, what I use to key me into the deception, and to cut right through it so I'm not persuaded so easily. Yeah, there may be sometimes we'll hold off and make a decision, but I'm saying that once you can cut through the time it takes to identify the lie, this technology is at the level that it's going to be very, very much more difficult. This is not just this is not just like a written information or activity you can watch. This is the manipulation of those activities to an outcome for whatever purpose, completely outside of your idea. So not to fear. You have to just understand. This is what they can do. Just take a step back on everything you see. So I've always told you, even I don't know that I make many mistakes in what I tell you. Yeah, the words don't form sometimes. Sometimes a word will come out, it's not quite, but the major ideas are not faulty. I don't know that I've ever done that to you at all, ever. Never been in me to even consider that. Not even to get you to get to the right spot. I don't have that in me either, I don't think. That these things you are going to need are here. You have to get away from thinking, oh, you can see stuff. It's beyond us, folks. I tell you that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is like a small manual. It's an abbreviated manual of your frailties. And we don't understand our autonomic systems to know how they've been looked at and can be manipulated, and we can see all the evidence coming out now. So this is a time when we have to really understand our limitations and work from that. Although we act through our power, our skill set that we know we work with in the things we can prove to ourselves, but we're going to have to make sure that as we move along, everything is checked. And I'll just tell you this one thing: you're going to have to then get out and you're going to have to be that first-hand witness, and then even then you'll have to question some of your stuff. But real time, it's going to be a little bit harder. Certainly not when you walk into a bunch of crisis actors and not filled in, unless you kind of recognize some of them have smiles on their face and their legs blown off. But we're coming to a time, folks. You're going to have to really understand that there's movers and shakers in this world that want your mind. They want you to buy into something, and it may not be anything you'd ever do if you were told the truth. These people are masters of advertisement. They've figured you out. They figured me. I'm looking at these videos. I can't tell, folks. So Movie was telling us, Lookers, I was told that. So you get you can get on the internet, find it yourself. I'm just going to throw some links in there. Just interesting what they were telling us was coming, how much more efficient it is now when it finally breaches the public awareness, and then you can know that behind the scenes you put more money to this thing, folks, and technology. I don't know what they could do. They could even overcome what they tell you is a limitation, a hand in front of your face. I'm sure that they've figured out. They get another camera, a couple cameras and some matrix layers on that, and they could work all that out. It's within my cognition, and I don't even know about the technology more than seeing that it has been done in other places different. So this image is this illusion they build for us. We heard about, I don't want to get into the crisis actor stuff and the false flag, because all that's a big question too. False flags are a little bit different than what we see, these drills that are gone live and then or actual killing people. We don't. That's another thing. But in the wake of the Brussels attack, the U.S. quietly admits to their own act of terror that killed 42. So what we think is the government killing you, they finally will, during some other strife, will kind of throw it out there. Yeah, we killed you. And we blamed it on the terror. And I tell you, that's why I know you can look at these things in past. That's why when I finally see it, and I finally am convinced of it myself, I'm convinced that it's absolutely the way that it would be done if it was fabricated. I started calling it the war of terror. So the United States quietly admits to their own act of terror, where 42 died. While the world's attention zeroed in on attacks of Brussels, the United States made a stunning admission of the responsibility for an attack of its own last year in Afghanistan, the deadly bombing at the Médecins Sans Frontières, the MSF, or the Doctors Without Borders hospital in Kunduz. So there we have it. The United States admitting where they deny their attorneys. They deny that they killed anybody. They now admit when there's this bigger issue come up to be able to cover the fact, and they hope that falls under the radar. I wanted to call your attention to it. United States government, it's not the white knight. I mean, I know a lot of people listening to me know that, but I mean, this is evidence that you use that we need to, these are people in the government that supposedly represent you around the world and also reflect back to you locally, that are the consciousness that's going through this country, that needs to be called out. So we do also one other thing is we remember they blame other, they say in Afghanistan they couldn't blame the Russians weren't there. We blame other people. That's false witness. I mean, that's a high crime and misdemeanor, okay? I mean, it's just like stuff you just don't do. Not if you want to agree with, live with people and peacefully. You got to trust, folks. If you don't trust the government, we have a problem. Folks, we have a problem. I've been declaring this forever. The other problem is the United States lies as well. They don't just deny, they lie. Russia denies Syria hospital bombing. When you see that the United States bombed a hospital in Afghanistan, and I'm going to talk about what Doctors Without Borders really is. Remember, anything without borders is the UN governance agenda in your face, making a point that they're important. Remember that. Anything without borders. The Supreme Court said that the states have borders, and you can't bust those. So anything without borders is not United States of America. Nonetheless, and I made that question to you before, but Russia denies the Syrian hospital bombing. Well, see, the United States will lie on we now see that they admit that they bombed a hospital, the United States bombed a hospital in Afghanistan, and then they blame the one in Syria on Russia, when in fact we know the United States is the one that bombs hospitals now. When is that admission going to come out? What next real bombing for the purpose of passing of Zio West, pushing the agenda in Brussels, the heart of Europe? Don't miss all these associations, folks. This is going to be coming out at us. This is coming out all over the world. The heart of the world, if you will, of the governance and the financial structuring is coming out against us. I don't know why. We're going to have to respond to it. There's really not even a question here. It's not an opinion. It's just what the dynamic. It's a natural law in the world. We're not good about. People are not good with each other. Governments put a cover on that to make and justify this warring nature that we are. So Russia on Tuesday denied the claims it bombed a hospital funded by Doctors Without Borders in northern Syria. Well, folks, I mean, they've been pretty clear that they've been pretty accurate about their bombing. Now that we know the United States the United States hides the admission underneath the Brussels attack, why wouldn't we say, wait a minute, revisit this one that happened in Syria? Russia's not known to do that. They're known to be pretty accurate, but we now know someone who isn't and who's intending to hurt these hospitals, whatever the underlying political agenda is. Okay, so here we have it. Put the connections. We've really got to step up and stand up against these insane psychopaths and whatever worse. I mean, just concentrated evil in the government of the United States. We're not going to do that through a leader. We've got to do that. We've got to show general, consistent disdain, revulsion, and insult, and go after this subversion that's happened. I can tell you, though, that more than likely the United States is not going to be bombing the next hospital with a F-35. I can't imagine why it took so long, but apparently it was last week near the end after the broadcast. Military admits the $1 trillion F-35 program is a failure. Folks, all I can say is about time. I don't know. The war machine does this. This is supposedly coming out of taxpayers' dollars. You know, this is all fictional machination. So it's all, they're getting you all to follow down a promise that'll never be fulfilled. As long as you agree with that, they're going to keep doing this. And so now a lot of people got lots of power in the world and influence to make war machines to go kill people. In this case, this project was never good to start with. All the people in the military agreed with it. The foundation of the system had never checked it until they finally, after all this money and all this waste, comes out this massive boondoggle is a total bust, the Pentagon admits. About time, that's what I say. But now what, folks? So you see, when you start watching what's going on, that the lie of United States government power, military power, is pervasive. When you start seeing what's going on with what Russia's done, while we've been doing these kinds of projects, you better be real concerned about our ability to continue doing the saber rattling that we are if push comes to shove against nations like Russia, where they are willing to lose half their population to stop you. Do that with China, folks. We're talking about this. So the F-35 is, the Pentagon admits they finally wasted enough that the project's gone. This is what they do. This is the lie they tell you. So we can kind of be assured most likely, although I'm sure they've got a couple of running around, the next hospital the United States bombs and denies and blames on whomever, even Russia or whomever, is probably not going to be bombed by an F-35. I think they found out that the F-16 outperformed it as well. So how far back is that? And more lies, more evidence on what's going on the wars that they declare against us, that you don't understand our real declarations of war that should never be, because as long as they exist in these emergencies, they allow to them to operate under these necessities and go extrajudicial. And so we have to start looking. This is not just a war on marijuana. This is a war against people that was fabricated, no different than maybe prohibition to cause something and the people had to stand up and throw it off. This war, Nixon advisor admitted war on drugs invented to crush anti-war and black movements. In 1994, a former Nixon policy advisor admitted the war on drugs was waged not to keep America safe, but to crush dissent. According to John Ehrlichman, who served time in prison for his involvement in Watergate scandal, the drug war was intended to disempower anti-war and black rights movements in the 1970s. I'll stop there. There's a whole political discussion we could have about the fraud of the anti-war movements and the black rights. This was more division. This is all that that they used to throw something else on top. But here's evidence coming out of the mouth of someone who was at the time involved that says that if we want to, these issues are false flags to get you to move in a direction that they respond to continue the control. Evidence today that they're admitting that this war on drugs is another fraud. Where it adjusts your political views and that constrains your political views, that's what's called terrorism now under the new definition. So if we learn these terms, we can just say, well, wow, what you just admitted there was a treason, literally, but it's this felony that keeps going up that looks like the government, looks like the state. It's just one more organized crime syndicate. So I don't know why I hear more people arguing with each other in the chats or saying they don't know enough. I mean, this right here would tell me I know enough. If I was doing some kind of a thing with drugs and I was into, let's say, the 420 crowd, and I thought that was important, and I was thinking, well, I don't want to legalize this, I want to decriminalize it. And then I'm saying, well, the whole reason why this is even an issue is because the federal government created a lie to create a war that they used to usurp all of our rights. And you focus on that, then that gets rid of the war, doesn't it? When the war goes away, then you get to look around and say, well, then what was the crime? You don't have to legalize it to get me to get a permit, to be illegal, to give the immunity or privilege in order to do something that couldn't be a crime. See, they even get us working against us for the future that they need. They wanted legalization. That's why it's going to be rare to watch, but it's going to be very interesting to watch who actually decriminalizes, makes it not a crime no more, because that is going to be where they need to go for you, not for the state. And everybody sits back and doesn't talk and allows legalization, kind of like labelization, Same thing for GMOs. You see the law inside that was going to eliminate and accept over 80% of the existing product. We found out the 20% that was going to be required labeling was going to be on the little producer, not the big one. And so they were criminalizing a class of people underneath this labeling. It's all the same criminalization. The notice of harm is what, like on these data sheets for your pharmaceuticals. If you look, they're disclosures of harm that are given license to exist. The whole world is inverted about what you think this is. And everything you look at is a notice telling you a crime is going on, it seems, if you kind of look at it in that regard. No, I'm not a paranoid. I just look and see the notice all around me, and it tells me something. And I just happen to have, maybe not looking like those glasses on them or whatever they live, I started out with a decoder ring. I started doing letters and things. I had a little decoder ring that kind of gave me the insight. Then I guess I started to see different, so I got these glasses. When they slapped the rose-colored glasses off, I had to go look for a different type, I guess. So that's what this shows me. And so I understand now how to embrace that problem so that I can work to defeat it. Although I've told you, it's not a one-man show here. It's not a one-woman show. That's why it feels so difficult to continue when you look around you and see lots of other people just ain't getting it. When we can predict a court case outcome before it even got written, and it goes down for that reason, you have to admit that's an astonishing miracle. The odds, like the Brussels guy, the Mormon kid, 3 times at the different bombings. I mean, 1,000,000,000 to 1. No, how could we predict the outcome to the letter, if you will, on this court case? Months and months and months before it even got filed. You have to have an insight to do that. And you get that from doing these word studies and tying those words together, and don't trespass jurisdictions of, like I've told you before, all these different definitions to me on one word are just different jurisdictions that they're being used in. You got to find the one that they're being used in and stay true to that in that in that area of what you're speaking to. And it doesn't have to be only law. It could be all kinds of different academic things as well. And that's what you're kind of seeing there, the academia approach. They've given all these words to us. And there's a word hierarchy. There's a chain of title to every word. You see, it's this chain of title to the foundation. You have to have the chain of evidence to the foundation. When you do, there's nobody that can take that away from you. When you listen to me, someone can take it away from you. You don't do the due diligent work that it takes to see it for yourself. There is no way I can waterboard Ron Steffens at all to remove. Well, he may tell me he's going to remove it, but what I'm doing to him will prove what he's read. I can't wipe that from his mind now, what he sees, how he sees it. His description is his. That's his response to what now he sees. You all do that, will do that. Those of you that talk to me back and tell me what you're doing, I see it. And that's the protection, folks. That's the only thing I can see, is that you are prepared in that way. No other way. There's no silver bullet against the Mongol horde, against the usurping occupier, against those that don't like you in mass. There's no protection against that. They have that in them. You can't stop that. That's why anarchy is. So, it's admitted, we've been watching, I've been trying to touch on this. The war has been a fraud. You kind of know that. All of my, the listeners here, it's not, but I'm talking about taking that information and using it now. Stop this nonsense. As long as we have these wars declared against us on anything, we're going to be subject to this tyranny, because that's where they justify it. Look at what Russia was able to do to help Syria, embracing the concept of the terror of is us. Completely gave them license to help Syria upon their request. No, that's probably the biggest point. But are completely protected and justified in whatever they do. Whenever the United States talks against it, makes the United States look frivolous, at minimum, if not buffoons, if not criminal. So you find the narrow path that's in a foundational place, and you have some protection. Does that mean that Russia can go back to bed and go to sleep? Absolutely not. There's a war in the world, and it's you against yourself. I don't like it. I certainly would be rather doing something else. I didn't want to lose sleep the other night trying to figure out how does this fraudulent, void decision, how is it going to affect my life? All my focus on doing what I've been doing for over a decade now, focus is going to be undermined to the point of extra action to be able to, it gives me the opportunity to out it, but I now have to concern who's going to take on this as an authority, and then we have to have them argue, or I have to argue and show that it's not valid. See, they come back with this, well, what do you know? You're not an attorney. Do you understand the control structure you live under? If you don't quite get that, you really have to get that. That's the environment. I get that, so I'm working, my mind's working to figure out, and I've already got some answers. The answers come pretty quick. It's just you got to work it out. You got to toss and turn for a while. You got to get reassess the battlefield. That's what it takes. And say, okay, we got this now coming at us. They're going to do it this way. This, that, and the other thing will answer all that. Then we have to do this, and then we have to go here. The answers are coming. But unless you're in that battlefield and understand it very well, you're going to just be you're going to be talking and yakking, and that's about it. And thinking, I'm nuts. I mean, you just think I have nothing to say to you. I don't know how many people this week have come and said, boy, after really doing this stuff, I can't see it different than what you're saying. And I'm using it so that it works. I mean, this stuff is starting to work. It doesn't work instantly. It's not like taking the magic pill, the happy pill. That's not how this thing works. You're in a war. You take your best shot and you hope you drop somebody. You drop a bomb where it's going to do the most effect. But you do it in this so-called civilized way. They've got you sucked into their civilization. See, you're not outlaw. You've been presumed sucked in. They've sucked you into these jurisdictions that the Supreme Court won't even touch. And so you have to know how to extricate yourself, because you were never actually sucked in. You were sucked. They treated you as you were sucked in. Remember, as law, as money, as this, as that is not is. Is. Clinton did a great statement for us if we pay attention. That depends on what is. I'm telling you to define what is, and your is different than their is, and find the place where they can't trespass, and you've got the answers for you. Subject to their ongoing war against you, which just identifies them no different than Russia used. It's very brilliant. I don't know if people appreciated what they did there. It's brilliant how they they embraced the war of terror despite it's a fraud. And look at the power they got out of that. And yet the United States undermines everything. Just embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for them because they are beyond embarrassment, and everyone believes these people to be the leader. I can't wait for an alien to come. I don't mean coming over the border. I'm talking from space land somewhere, coming in, and where's your leader? Well, it's all these. They got 1 million of them. Take your pick. There's 400 some odd in Congress. There's a couple in this thing that's called the White House. There's all these agencies, all of these people. They're all leaders. They're all no good for it. They're all going in a direction none of us want. They're leading their own band. They're not for us. We go our own way. We go our own way for a foundational purpose. And we don't have to abandon that organized system of inside ourselves that has the right to organize with others in a peaceful way. That's not no rulers. You're your own ruler. You can't deny rulers. You have to be your own. I said you're a nation unto yourself. That's a sovereignty. You have to make that decision. You have to be an organization. You have organs. They're organized. They're in a system. They work. They're autonomous. They're sealed from everybody else. You better have a ruler working. And you make the rules. So you got to have rulers and rules. And then everything else is a fractal outside of that has to then, all these waveforms have to interact, and hopefully in a peaceful way. They have to come in consonance, not dissonance. And what the other side wants, they put out a waveform that you respond to that and make dissonance. It's kind of simple in that regard, too, to see it. So I say, embrace them. You're actually putting a resonance around them. You shut that down. It becomes disaffecting in you. Do you embrace it to make it yours? No, you embrace it to be able to control it. But you have to understand it first. We have to understand these people that are in positions of decision. We get it from like Google. We were talking, this technology knows you better than yourself. That Google can throw stuff in information to sway your mind. And if you know they're swaying your mind, you'll be the worst to be mind swayed. Talk about mind control. That little section was the new mind control. We find Google integrated in all this. Clinton emails reveals Google sought to overthrow of Syria's Assad. What is this virtual corporation even integrating with this stuff? Where'd they get the permission? Why don't you have that, I guess, is another thing. Where are you in all this? They've taken claim. And they're taking action with someone who's going to run for president behind the scenes, and they claimed to do no evil, although I think I understand they dropped even that. That should have been a big deal. Google sought overthrow of Syria's Assad. Who is Google? Who is Google over the people of Syria? Who are these people? They're concentrated evil. Who they associate with tells you a lot. So Google and Clinton are working together. They thought it was a great thing. Great idea, we're going to do tracking. No, that tells you that they've set up, they make apps to track y'all. There's a ton of information inside this. And as I was reporting without the citation, Google executive Schmidt to head the DoD advisory board. The same DoD that brought you a Windows 10. The same corporation here that gets its nose into places that doesn't care about so-called democracy and the will of other people. Doesn't care about this this sovereignty in anybody. If they'll go after Assad and the people of Syria, how much do you think they think of you? These corporations are the undead. You live in the zombie apocalypse right now, folks. These are the undead. They live in death. They are pieces of paper acknowledging some existence no different than the money system has been fabricated. Some derivative. It's a derivative of someone's mind and creation under legalities that allow it to function. These are zombies, these corporations. They kind of tell you they're people too. Well, the people are zombies too. I call them crickets. You're living the zombie apocalypse and haven't recognized it. The undead. Google is interfering, and the State Department thinks that's a great idea. And that tells you all these people could care less about you. They don't care about the people of Syria. Why do they think about the people of the United States? And what about the people of the United States? Why aren't they stepping up for themselves? Some of you are. I'm just, again, talking in generalities. Let's look at the miners. Why would 90% of the miners go where we have identified it's a cesspool of crime? Why would they go to that for advice? What is in us that allows that? And we do it as a herd. We go right on. We go do it. And what's really sad on top of the fact that you see it happening is they may not understand it this way, but when they agreed to do that, and then they step up like the attorney to say they represent everybody else that hasn't, that's a felony, folks. All these people that want protection, we can't do it ourselves, we're helpless and hopeless, and we don't want to, we can't look at the law over Jefferson Mining District, that might be too much like what we're supposed to do. Instead, let's go to this legal system that's cha-ching, working out ways to keep us sending them money. Oh, you're our savior now because your system says that we aren't protected unless we talk to you. What is that in us that allows that? Sad, but dangerous as heck. But it's felony as well, because any of those people that got together to say that those decisions for their cases and their property can influence everybody else's property, that's a felony, theft by extortion, and a felony coercion on anyone that they didn't have consent entitled to do. The whole states are doing this. And the only way you can see that, you don't have that when you don't have land and property rights that are separate. I just defined for you what you need to do to make it separate. And once you show you're separate, and you've outed what they've done as a scheme and artifice to suck you into that which they could not do otherwise, besides the fraudulent scheme and artifice, now you've outed them twice. Then you know where you're at. Until you do that, everyone plays this game, I don't want to cross the bar, I don't want to do this, I can't do that, the magic word, I got a special name. Folks, I told you, then it's like the Matrix. What did the Matrix say about the little kid and the spoons flying around? He said the spoons don't exist. Or bending the spoon, I think it was. I haven't watched that movie in a long time. The spoon doesn't exist. That's the answer. The name doesn't exist. It's what we call the paperwork I'm writing here. Let's just go through this. Not the paperwork, but a couple of the ideas. Fraud in fact. It's the identity they use to move the scheme and artifice fraud along, theft by extortion along. The name doesn't exist. I've told you how to prove that. I've showed you how to prove a negative, advisedly, but prove a negative that way. That name doesn't exist. It does exist in legal and as a presumption, but you can throw that out quick. So why are we worried about a name at all? Once the name doesn't exist in their state and they can only deal in the state, why are you having more to say? There is no discussion now. See, it's not as involved as we're told. All that stuff gets you in. What you hear on the internet gets you in so that you think you're doing something. The caveat that I'm talking here to also says, but when you find yourself doing the more correct thing, and you find yourself in the gang, not in it, but amongst it now, how do you think that's going to go for you? Then there's ways to deal with that as well. It's what I call the blizzard. It's a blizzard of paperwork you start sending out to start making the public record, to helpfully make a record before anybody adulterates your condition so that they see what's going on. Because that's about all I can see we get to do as we press the law to enforce. We press the accountability pursuant to law to enforce it, and that shows that when it's not, in its lack of enforcement by the seats of decision, that they're criminals too. There's a lot to do here, but it's something you can do. It's a methodical, evidentiary, facial, public method to counter their hidden criminality that's in your face. It's a hidden criminality that operates under the color of law. That's what legal does. Only I've been able now to see something else, to applying more laws. I can now see the name attaches to a tool, is the tool they use to get you into money laundering, theft by extortion, obtaining your signatures fraudulently for the purpose of the fact. And it's done over and over as a pattern. Now I'm talking racketeering. You just lay out the elements, folks, quickly, folks. You don't have to go on and on. It's not constitutional at all. You just admit the Constitution works, all these laws for accountability are there for the reason, and then you just shove them forward. Do I expect that the warden is going to arrest himself? Don't make me laugh. Might there be enough dissension I can put around and maybe outside that prison that might very well make it so they have to at least remove the guy? Well, that's a real good possibility, isn't it? You see that happening all the time. Can it get better? Absolutely. Remember, Kitzhopper doesn't exist in office anymore. Can I prove to you that our lawsuit a year before that did that? No, absolutely not. But he's not there no more. We sued that guy for doing constitutional crime, treasonous stuff, as well as the Bar Association and the parties and some other people. He's not in office now. I don't need to know that I did it or not, or my colleague did it, or the Jefferson Mining District did it or not. We did it. I don't know what. I don't need to know that any part of that worked or didn't work. It happened, folks. We got somebody worse into place. So our work's not over, but we now have the method of attack to stop it, or at least to expose it clearly. If we could just get a lot of people to understand it's not what they think, but it's what's really going on that they have to be watching. So Google, folks, and I really, and I appreciate that sometimes we have to. I've been trying to get run from Google. As soon as they said do no evil, I said, uh-oh, they're making evil. And here we have proof, folks. It's going on and on and on. We can keep engaging with all these people. We can make them the biggest thing, the most powerful undead there is, and they're going to control the things they can control. They think they're so big and bad, and they are, actually, when you get into the human frailty section where they treat you like a little animal and they appeal to the animal nature. They are a very big and bad entity that believes it can destroy nations, folks. You have that right in it's right inside your borders, folks. And speaking to those borders, the court ruling allows police to stop and question anyone within 100 miles of the border. This is really not new news. I just want to remind you about it, that the new court decision, the United States Border Patrol operates 71 traffic points, including 33 permanent traffic points, checkpoints near the southern border of the United States. Also, there are a number of Border Patrol checkpoints in the northern border states, North New York and Maine, within 100 miles from the Canadian border. And also close to 200 million Americans live within a 100-mile interior checkpoint zones. Don't forget the borders on the coasts, 100 miles in. The thing about all this, to get worse, expect to see more checkpoints across the United States after the recent Reinerson versus the U.S. ruling. And the excerpts from the court say the Border Patrol agents at interior checkpoints may stop a vehicle, refer it to a secondary inspection area, request production of documents from the vehicle's occupants, and question the occupants about their citizenship. The purpose of the stop is limited to the ascertaining of the occupant's citizenship status. The permissible duration of an immigration checkpoint stop is therefore the time reasonably necessary to determine the citizenship status of persons stopped. And so it goes on and on. I don't want to keep getting just reading. There is now a new case that the government's going to use, and I would have to say maybe so. You go ahead and look at, maybe see these stops. I want you to, those of you that are working to understand and how to look at this, I want you to go to the blogcaster when I get it posted and get this thing and get the case. And I want you to read very, very carefully. And I'd like to have you read the dissenting judge, which looked like she's right on. Not talking about competency here, just the fact of the reasoning behind it. She points out all the reasons why the decision's wrong. I think her one dissenting voice is very powerful. But look at now what your new standard will be, and you'll find out you can limit that exposure. Don't do what this guy did. Fix his problems, and you can limit your exposure to a very narrow window of time. And so you got to understand what the dynamic is, and if you understand the narrow path that they've given you to get through, they have the authority to stop and identify you, but that's it. And when you know that, you should have your little bag of law with you for traveling, not your right to drive, forget all that, for traveling in this occupied nation that has the right to check the borders back to 100 miles, that will look at you and repeatedly as some illegal alien trying to come in. Like all of a sudden they go stupid from agency to agency, or agent to agent. That gives you another clue. Remember, those standard operating procedures can be attacked as well. It's on case-by-case basis. Each one of you can't do it for the rest. One of you can lead and give an example of how the rest can do it, but each one has to do this stuff. So understand you may be stopped on near the borders by these checkpoints. You need to know what's going on there, and you need to read that. I'm not going to go through it. I go through it. You think you know. Well, next thing you know, I'm not going to go by a border. Next thing you find yourself by a border or being stopped by one. What if they're outside the 100 mile? Do you even know enough to say why about that's wrong? What if they bring an actual exigence to be able to stop you? Do you know how to stop that one, or at least limit it? This is the world we live in. So now they have another imposition they're going to put on us. If you don't know what the narrow reading of this is and how to limit it, you will be subject to this, and they will get whatever they want out of you, and they'll make you pay for it. This story of this is pretty astounding. The gentleman was with the Army as well. He had 4 documents, and that wasn't enough. And you'll hear what the dissenting judge says about that and why the thing went. And why this went on. This whole case was about the agents, the police down there, the border patrol, claiming immunity, and the court came back and said they were immune. And this judge says that no, the immunity didn't extend when they did this, and this, and this. And you have to list. You better read for that and understand it, but also understand 4 documents of proof, so-called, weren't enough, folks. So you have to understand what the deal is there to understand how maybe just a voice response will be sufficient. Let me throw out one more quick thing. Have you thought or considered, and this is partly why they want the real ID to go national, and this is also why you'll hear something about a passport being asked for as a proof. And he offers that, and it's not good enough. But have you ever thought that where a government doesn't issue a document for the purpose, that you can't produce it, and therefore their request for proof is invalid on its face? And then maybe as you think about that and you read this case, think about the fact and applying why all they can inquire is on 1 or 2 questions, and they have to kind of come quick. See, without getting into too much dialogue, and I just want to get past these points, I wouldn't want to get too embroiled with it. Once they want to embroil me, I want to make sure I'm making my record, that's for sure.
and it's in the right way, not what happened. The guy wasn't wrong. It's just that he walked himself into it the wrong way. And and once he reads the case, hopefully he can explain this back now later, that they were involving him to produce a document that may or may not actually exist, because they haven't defined what's adequate. That's another problem. And so they say that you have to declare what your citizenship is. If you don't, they'll detain you and beat you up, do whatever they're going to do. And so I know there's a citizenship I can claim. It's not U.S. citizenship. It's citizen of the United States pre-1868. Why? Because I'm a grantee that accepts a grant of land. So I have no problem of saying that I'm a citizen of the United States for the purpose. I'm a grantee of the United States citizen. I'm a grantee citizen of the United States. That's what I would answer. He has really no power beyond that, because the other thing is he's asking me for a document. I said, which one are you going to accept? Which one did the United States government produce for me for this purpose? He's got to say there was none. So they can't demand of you things that are not existent. That's why they can't demand a license or permit from someone who doesn't have one. But let me show you the little secret. That's kind of been negated when you have a license plate on your car. And you all know if you take that dang thing off, you're going to be beat up by the locals. You put it on, you'll be beat up by the Border Patrol. So I'm not saying there's an answer there. I'm saying they get their cues by the fact of where they are in their ignorance, putting upon you that border authority. At this point, it may not be the fight to have, but this case tells you how to answer. Once you tell them who you are, they're supposed to let you go. The next thing they're asking, if they're asking for a document, I'd ask them, which document was given to me for the purpose of giving to you? Food for thought more than anything else here, folks. There's ways to answer this. That little bit translates onto lots of places. Moving on. Breaking news, scientists think fluoridated water and ADHD, obesity, and depression. This is a bunch of stuff I didn't get to, the health stuff. There's now links between this fluoridated water and ADHD. Again, we can say there's not really been lots of studies. For those of you that are interested in what's causing problems, wanting to get to the root of it, there's more evidence here. Wow, we didn't expect to see this mainstream news, especially Newsweek, in their tech and science section, no less. There are 2 studies just out about the dangers of fluoridated water. The first published study is at Toronto's York University, which finally shows the strong correlation between fluoridated water and ADHD. And so we have all this psychiatrocracy on us that defines these, just makes up these arbitrary definitions, and we see autism looking like ADHD, and slow child syndrome, whatever the heck you want to call it. I've got no brains in my head. All this stuff, this comes up made up. You see that the fluoridated water can respond as an injection from a vaccine. The second is a study at UK's Kent University in a study that shows that fluoridated water can negatively affect the thyroid, causing severe weight gain and depression. Folks, think about the women in this country and just about everywhere that has fluoridated water. Think about it. Forget the fluoridated water. Think about all the women that have weight gain and depression. The psychotropic drugs that are given out for this condition may have just found its cause in the fluoridation of water. This is not just about little kids having development problems. This is how your body responds to these materials. Evidence, folks. 2 studies. You can go do the study on them. I'm not going to really say more. This is what your government allows to happen to you. Should not be okay with you. You know the fluoridation causes your mind not to work so well. How in the heck do you expect to defend yourself against someone who knows that, who doesn't drink fluoridated water and is in a seated decision because you put him there or her there? What kind of a zombie are you and don't know it? You're the undead. You're not functioning in your best ways for your purposes, consistent with the peaceful nature that we would hope we all want to go on. Not guaranteed from the outside world, but certainly maybe between us. How much of a zombie are you that you don't know? that the government knows you're a zombie. They know they have corporations that are the undead. I'm saying you live the zombie apocalypse, and here a government study. They've already studied this before we get there. The government actually has a zombie apocalypse plan, and it's been declassified. How far behind it are we, folks? We're told that we laugh and all these movies come out. The government is so far ahead of this, and they know why they're doing it, because they've been feeding you things like fluoridated water, like vaccines, pharmaceuticals, other chemicals, glyphosate, worse than glyphosate, 1,000 times worse within the proprietary blend that you'll never know about. This is what the government does, and allows at least to happen, because there's no control. The United States government gives immunity for vaccines. There's a few years ago, the Center for Disease Control launched a zombie preparedness initiative that drew significant attention. The Department of Defense followed suit and developed an entire training course intended for the Joint Operational Planning and Execution System. The complete response plan, called CONPLAN 888, was recently declassified, and it's just as weird and creepy as you might imagine. Folks, I would have never thought about zombies. It doesn't even match any reality in my mind. Okay, I've seen some of those movies. Those were kind of creepy and scary. But really, I mean, reality. And yet the government studied it. So we have to say, well, why was the government studying? Unless they know they were creating a condition that would provide for it, and it was coming through the initiation of the Centers for Disease Control, which allows these very same things to harm you. More evidence, folks. You live the zombie apocalypse. They've been planning for it. It's just not quite to the point that each of us has to shoot each other's head off or whatever, however you kill it. Silver bullet, I don't know, stake in the heart. What are you going to do? Chop everybody up? I don't know, Soylent Green them? What are you going to do? I don't know. But they're planning for it, folks. I can't even imagine that, and they're planning for it. If you didn't think it gets weird. You don't think governments are doing stuff and just not letting us know, and it's all right there for us to know. Am I going to drop everything now because I know they're planning for the zombie apocalypse? No, I've been watching y'all live it. See, the zombies don't really do anything, actually. The zombies that do something are the undead, not the living. Well, there's a few of us that we don't drink fluoridated water. We watch what we eat very clearly, and we understand that even that can be a deception, and we do what we can, and we do the best we can. And then we must, I guess, step up. With some of us, maybe not, but some of us do step up and try to, with that remaining clarity, keep pushing. Because these vaccines are good. There's big business running around. We're talking here in weapons running around the country and around nations and all this weaponry. It's not just in guns and bullets. It's also in these medicinals, and it's also in these, these pharmaceuticals, I should say. And it's also in these, medicine's not a good thing either. But anyway, go on. Vaccines, and it's in these, even the standards that they apply to you. These are all weapons that we find out back into. It's not just the fluoridated water that's making you a zombie or the undead. It's the unlive is what it ends up being for people. It's the undead for a corporation. But see, they're all people too, because the whole condition is understood to be in this fallen state. It's the stinking abyss that Ron Stephan identified for himself very, very accurately. Why I call it the stinking abyss, in part. China, Shandong, illegal vaccine scandals sparks anger. The illegal vaccine ring involved hundreds of people and affected 24 provinces and cities, local media said. On Monday, news that a boy had died after a vaccination sparked more anger, though officials said there was no link to the Shandong scandal. China has seen several health and safety scandals in recent years. The question is asked in the article, isn't this genocide? Wow, it put a ton in this little article. You just get to see it. This is what's going on behind the scenes in China. That's the one that they found out. And it took a little boy dying to cause the problem. How many little kids are dying that are being denied by the CDC, the zombie planners? How many of them don't die and just get sick? Oh, you get to go to this court over here to get, we'll pay you bucks. We'll pay you more debt. And your life is now sucked up into this harm they've caused that they won't admit to it. The vaccines can be made wrong. They've apparently been wrong. It's been going on until a little kid died, little goat, little kid, little animal. This little boy dies, and that sparks the big deal. How much happens before the tipping point should bother you. Government concedes. This is old now. I'm going to bring up some old news. It's all before us. We can kind of ignore it. I'm going to go quickly just to remind you. And thank you to Gary L. for these. He's been popping these up just to show us it's been there. Don't forget about it. Don't go to sleep on this stuff. The proof is all there for us. Government concedes vaccine autism case in federal court. Now what? The story of 2011. We talked about all this. I just want to bring up, when he brought it up, I thought, okay, this may be a good roundup. We see all these vaccines and the fluoridated water, all these things that people have been complaining about that the government denies, and then all of a sudden, silently, these municipalities are stopping the fluoridation of water. Oh, but then we find out they're all lead and toxic waste dumps, these water systems. And lead's another thing that affects your system in a negative way. You become dysfunctional in yourself, within your own system, and within your own. They invade your land through water. Those International Horde of Trespassers, IUCN.org, International Horde of Trespassers, water without borders. These governments don't care about your borders. They don't care about your borders. They invade you with this water they know you need, and it's no good. Fluoridated water, lead, all these other things. Government concedes vaccine autism, so now your vaccines, China has a killing kids. We kind of covered up in the United States, but it was conceded back in 2011. You get the article. The United States concedes vaccine causes autism is the original document. I have the PDF. I went and found the news backstory back in 2008. That's, I think, before I started actually broadcasting, if I remember right. It's always in the news before us. It's not a question, I guess, is the point. So why it continues here 8 years later and is a question instead of a fact in whomever you would approach is kind of astonishing and should give you a little bitty clue of what we are up against as people. Brain damaged UK victims of swine flu vaccine get 60 million pounds compensation. Yeah, 1 million apiece. There was 60 claims. They get 1 million apiece to have their lives destroyed by a vaccine. Talking about glyphosate earlier, another report came out. Weed spread, and this was just a new report. Weed spread contamination of glyphosate weed killer. We were talking about they were attacking the wines. Attacking the beer in Germany. Well, we got it in California wines now. Weed killer in California wines. Glyphosate. 100% of the wine tested showed positive results for glyphosate. Even the organic. Got the report. You can just check it out. You get it on the blogcast or get the link. We can go on and on about it. I can talk to you about it. They tell you exactly how it's going on, why your organic is not good either. And I want to point out to you, to highlight for you, to look very carefully in the report where it talks about all those so-called inert ingredients with glyphosate that have been tested to be much more toxic, that are also there as at least implied with the occurrence of the glyphosate. They imply that the others are there because they don't degrade any different than the glyphosate didn't. And this isn't even sprayed on the plants, folks. This is sprayed near them. Organic wasn't even sprayed at all to show you how far this stuff goes. And it doesn't break down. And we've talked about the gut problem, your gut bacteria being destroyed. We talked about this glyphosate, just the glyphosate, not the real toxic stuff they don't tell you about. This stuff is a good mineral binder. So it's going to bind all the minerals your body needs. So if you start getting colds, can't figure out why you're getting colds, well, maybe it's sucking the zinc up. Maybe your magnesium is getting sucked up. You constipated a little bit, folks? Maybe your magnesium is getting about it. No, notwithstanding the fluoride you're getting in your mouth. And you probably don't care anyway. You unlive people there, being affected by the undead corporations. It doesn't stop there, folks. I was telling you Fukushima is covering it's being used as the mythical creature scapegoat to cover the fact that your nation is radioactive all over the place. And here we have revealed Army scientists secretly sprayed St. Louis with radioactive particles for years to test chemical warfare. Warfare technology is not new news, is what I reported behind the woodshed. Just want to remind you, for all y'all thinking it's all Fukushima, it's all just current stuff, it's just now being exposed. No, the stories are over years and decades, evidence sitting there that we could be collecting to approach people that are in the seats of decision that continue to make decisions to harm you. That at least I, and those that are with me, can show have a direct connection to a foreign imposition, a foreign way of life, a foreign thought, an alien thought that's not meant for us, and in fact it's made and created in order to essentially destroy us. And in the process of the slow destruction, they are going to profit. They're going to empower themselves to do more harm longer. And what's the longest harm we can do maybe than radiation? And I was telling you back in 212, they were talking about certain things were going on. Where do you think all that goes, folks? All this radiation. All this, we want to blame it on, like, you're not doing something right. You're the fault. No, we don't know what the fault is anymore. I can sure tell you if I've got a whole lot of things interfering with my cell growth or initiation or growth into development. If I've got a bunch of materials that are not being brought to the building site, or information or energy that's coming in to shut the gates of the deliveries I need, I'm not going to build the structure I was thinking I was going to need. That everything in our society that's licensed by government appears to be that harmful thing, stopping our development, stunting our development. You can be okay with it and just do nothing, or else you can find somewhere to step up and quit using the excuse that something I say isn't enough or there's no use. I mean, I'm just looking at a serious, I'll use the word defeat, because in a way it does defeat us in a way that it's not going to be so easy now. We're looking at a serious defeat in land law in this country over an incompetent attorney before an incompetent magistrate judge in an incompetent court making decisions for the rest of y'all. Now, I'm not okay with that, and we're going to do what we can, but we're positioned pretty well. Remember, our lawsuit isn't affected by their lawsuit. For those miners that are listening to me that know about Jefferson Mining District, are part of it, we have our own response to that, and we'll see whether or not there's going to be some more resistance, but we have our answer that's different than their case. Our case wasn't about just SB 38, actually. It was about the fact and the injunction that's default judgment based. They didn't come to answer to their own crime, where they have a system that adulterates these laws. And because the court wasn't apprised intentionally by the attorney that our suit showed that SB 38 was created in a lawless manner, he didn't see it. How convenient. It's the same court we were in, folks. How blind is justice to do injustice is pretty amazing. But moving on to how long is the harm that's allowed by government, and the lie that they want to blame everything else. Like they blame Russia. Oh, we didn't bomb the hospital. Well, you didn't bomb the Bikini Islands either. And I told you when we got the reports from the yellowfin tuna, because they were blaming the bluefin tuna coming from Fukushima was on the back of the bluefin coming into San Diego. I said, no, the water, that's not even possible that way. It's coming from the yellowfin. Then we got the report that it was from the yellowfin. Here's the story. John Pilger, I really appreciate this guy's insight. I don't know much about him, but he really writes some interesting stuff. I don't get to read too much about it, but I think Gary L. again posted this. This is a recent article now. A world war has begun. Break the silence. And it speaks right to all this stuff, but it ties it into the politicians that we have today. But it was an insight here that I wanted you to hear. Pretty interesting. Things that we just may not understand or maybe know, but don't know the connections. That I thought was kind of interesting. I have been filming, this is John Pilger, I have been filming in the Marshall Islands, which lie north of Australia, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Whenever I tell people where I've been, they ask, where is that? If I offer a clue by referring to bikini, they say, you mean the swimsuit? Few seem aware that the bikini swimsuit was named to celebrate the nuclear explosions that destroyed Bikini Island. 66 nuclear devices were exploded by the United States in the Marshall Islands between 1946 and 1958, the equivalent of 1.6 Hiroshima bombs every day for 12 years. Bikini is silent today, mutated, and contaminated. Palm trees grow in strange grid formation. Nothing moves. There are no birds. The headstones in the old cemetery are alive with radiation. My shoes registered unsafe on a Geiger counter. Standing on the beach, I watched the emerald green of the Pacific fall away into the vast black hole. This was the crater left by the hydrogen bomb they called Bravo. The explosion poisoned people and their environment for hundreds of miles, perhaps forever. On my return journey, I stopped at the Honolulu airport and noticed an American magazine called Women's Health. On the cover was a smiling woman in a bikini swimsuit, and the headline, "You too can have a bikini body." A few days earlier in the Marshall Islands, I had interviewed women who had very different bikini bodies. Each had suffered thyroid cancer and other life-threatening cancers. Unlike the smiling women in the magazines, all of them were impoverished, the victims and guinea pigs of a rapacious superpower that is today more dangerous than ever. I relate this experience as a warning and to interrupt a distraction that has consumed so many of us. The founder of modern propaganda, Edward Bernays, described this phenomenon as, quote, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the habits and opinions, close quote, of democratic societies. He called it an invisible government. How many people are aware that a world war has begun? At present, it is a war of propaganda, of lies and distraction. But this can change instantaneously with the first mistaken order, the first missile. In 2009, President Obama, the unqualified one in my vernacular, he can call him the president if he wants. He's still unqualified in my eyes. In fact, all of them are seeming pretty much unqualified at all. But let me go back. In 2009, President Obama stood before an adoring crowd in the center of Prague, in the heart of Europe. He pledged himself to make, quote, the world free from nuclear weapons, close quote. People cheered and some cried. A torrent of platitudes flowed from the media. Obama was subsequently awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Can't even say it without stuttering. He was subsequently awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. It was all fake. He was lying. John Pilger, I like his writings. I can hear his voice. I can hear his cadence when he's writing. He writes just like he speaks, a lot more clearly than I do, I think, at times, with what that goes on. But I couldn't, all the things he threw in that. There's more to it. You can read the rest of on the Blogcaster. Get to the link and go there. Absolutely, you see the propaganda of the bikini swimsuit. We bombed the snot out of that place, and there's no snot there. See, there's not even birds. And then the tuna were there, and then we got all the proof. All the proof is before us. When are we going to care enough to do something about it? His comment about what effect the women there have had, it correlates directly to the United States of America and the problems we have here, that are masked over and over, not just by radiation, but by fluoridation, by pharmaceuticals, by vaccines, all this stuff. We don't know where the top end of this thing is. We don't really know the causation. All I can tell you is it's going on, and there's so many things that are allowed by government that if we don't clean that up, that's the pollution in government we need to clean up. We're going to see the future that they gave us, the future they want, the future we want as we see Agenda 23rd speak. They've got it planned out, folks. It's been planned. They've got it planned out before we even get there. They even have the zombie apocalypse plan, folks. It's just been declassified. You're living it, folks. They've already got that worked out. I find this fascinating. It's right there. We don't have to. It's not an opinion anymore for me. It used to be an opinion. Like, did I really read all this stuff? And because your mind is literally looking at the world You're looking at a completely different world. I'm not joking to you. When you start reading enough, well, maybe you'll experience this. Did me repeatedly. I get to a study, and at some point my mind would just feel like it's like flipping and flopping. It's trying to reorient itself to whatever the heck it just realized. And maybe my body wasn't in the right spot or something, because it was looking for a place to go. Literally felt like my brain was spinning around, moving around, and what the heck is this? And this is what was happening based on research. And after a while, you start losing perspective a little bit, because you start saying, okay, I know what I was seeing, but now I'm seeing this whole other thing, and I can't get rid of this. And you just have to start trusting in yourself. It's kind of disorienting. Maybe I should give you that one. It's kind of disorienting. Because then you listen to everybody that says you don't know what you're talking about. And you're looking at a whole different thing, and you know exactly they don't know what they're talking about. Talk about being asleep or not awake or not aware. It's really not aware. Completely oblivious, living the bliss. I think they're living their bliss. I mean, keep living your bliss. But anyway, there's a reality, and we got to come to terms with it. I may or may not have the part. I have a part of it. I may not have a complete eyeball, but I know what's working against me. I know, and we're right on it. We're all over that. We can predict the other side, and until you get into that place and work from a position, I guess, of calm, if you will, and direct, persistent action with your plan. You make the rules for your plan, and you execute them. Well, I don't mean that in a deadly thing, but you want them gone, and there's a way that we do this, so we set the example of a peaceful future. We don't need to actually put a maybe justifiable force, deadly force, but we can do short of that, and we kind of need to practice that as well, that we aren't going to do any of that unless we get involved. They're coming at us, and they're making threats against us, and they do things in order to get you to jump from the frying pan to the fire. They told you about your beer now in Germany and probably everywhere. Now your wine's no good, so stop whining, folks. You got glyphosate in your wine, so just stop whining. How's that? Let's get to work. Now, Brexit, let's get the British exit out of the EU financial structure. The threats come on those people. They're going to threaten your booze. Brexit could batter Britain's booze trade. These people are not bashful to attack you. They know what you need, you boozers, and they're going to attack it. And they're going to say this is what the government gets you the herd to run. Oh, if you come out of the EU, then you're not going to be, your booze is going to cost more. Well, folks, how about if we stop licensing that and just teach everybody how to make booze, and we can get rid of that nonsense as well. But this is the threat that we allow on ourselves because we allow the nonsense to use it to beat us down some more. They're not bashful to use this stuff against you. We joke about the circle race. I don't even know, the NASCAR, that's what it was. Yeah, they're all the same, all big entertainment systems. And you have the football, and you have beer and chips, and they'll threaten your beer and chips, and then you're going to take notice. They're doing it over there. They're threatening their beer and chips, but in the reverse way. So be careful of what you're looking for. They're threatening the booze to get people to jump in to keep Brexit from happening. People are just incorrigible, and you put up with it. And not you particularly, the generality here. And we were talking about they dumb you down and dumb you down and dumb you down to everybody looks the same age. And I was telling you they're dropping the age of capacity. It was a story. I'm finally going to get to it months and months later. Can a 3-year-old represent herself in immigration court? The judge thinks so. I don't have time to go through the story. A senior Justice Department official is arguing that 3- and 4-year-olds can learn immigration law well enough to represent themselves in court, staking out an unconventional position in growing debate over whether immigrant children facing deportation are entitled to taxpayer-funded attorneys is the problem of reducing your mind to the incapacity of a minor. They now elevate the minor to have capacity. And you're incapable, but this is the legal system. They're also taking and saying if you have capacity, then that 4-year-old is subject to adult control of all kinds. And I talked about earlier my documentary about child's welfare, and I've told you behind the scenes it's all a big organized criminal syndicate for child services, not the ones they're providing, but the ones the children are giving. This is where it's going, folks. This is the legal system. Broaching the idea that a 3-year-old can have enough awareness to enter into the legal system. That's what you're entering into. You are a 3 and 4 year old. If you're that much. This was a very fascinating story, but this is the lunacy behind this. You can allow it to happen. They're utilizing this against you. They're setting the standard in order to come against you and take away all capacity in you. Thank you for tuning in today. Again, donate where you can. MarkOnTheBeach.com for content or any information or suggestions, all that. RealLibertyMedia.com. We got the FN Network. It's over there, FN, Freedom's Network to join up with. And then that's the new social network. I didn't talk about WT. Some scallywags in that. Let's not worry about it. Let's get over there to Freedom Network. You can sign up. UCY.TV. And Jules, thank you very much. And we'll, again, the terrestrial broadcasters, I appreciate all the broadcast time. We'll talk to you next week.